Okay, we are back. I'm very happy to have on the Goldstein on Gelt show Danny Kofke, who is down in Georgia, and he's the author of several books. He wrote a book called A Simple Book of Financial Wisdom, Teach Yourself and Your Kids How to Live Wealthy with Little Money. And he also wrote another book with a great title, How to Survive and Perhaps Thrive on a Teacher's Salary, which quite frankly, Danny, seems a little bit difficult. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Doug, thanks so much for having me on.
So you talk to people about living on a low salary. Is that really possible today?
I think it is. And I think many people, when it comes to financial difficulty, it's not really an income problem, it's an outgo problem. And my family's living proof. I have two daughters. One just turned 10, one's about to turn 7. And my wife was a stay at home mom up until this past August. So for 9 years, stay at home mom. And in that time, we lived pretty much off my teacher's salary, which here in Georgia is around $43,000 a year. And despite that, we have no debt except the mortgage. We invest each month and are on track to retire as millionaires. We have an emergency fund in place. But I think most importantly is that we kind of get to pursue things that we are passionate about because we have control of our finances.
Wow, you sound like a Dave Ramsey dream come true.
Yeah, Dave's great. I love, interesting. We kind of followed a lot of his baby steps to get to where we were before I even knew who Dave Ramsey was. So it's kind of interesting. After moving here to Georgia a few years ago from Florida, that's when we started listening. I'm like, okay, wow, we're really kind of on board. But it's just, it goes back to, it's pretty basic on paper, pretty easy, but spend less than you earn. And when you do that, you'll always have money. And I know it's so much easier said than done. And then when the emotions get involved, that's when it makes it tricky. But I think a lot of people, they try to make financial matters too complicated. And, obviously, when it comes to investments and different types of insurance, then, okay, yeah, those can be confusing and you need to seek a professional. But day to day personal finance, day to day budgeting, it's not that difficult.
So let's try to clarify. You said that it's easier said than done to spend less than you earn.
Mhm.
So two questions then. Why is that true? In other words, why is it so difficult for people to do it? And can you give maybe one bit of wisdom that our listeners could take away to inspire them to be able to do that as well?
Okay. I think it's so difficult because first off, we're bombarded by ads. And I read an article, and it was an American Demographics magazine. They said by the time the average American is 21, they'll have been exposed to something like over 20 million ads. So we're constantly getting bombarded to part with our money. But secondly, I think there are so many people that are just unhappy in some area of their lives, whether it's spiritually, whether it's in their job, whether it's with their spouse, but in some area, there's something lacking. So they buy things to mask that unhappiness. And let's face it makes you happy for a while. If you go out and buy something, yes. But then that feeling goes away after a little while. And then you're in this vicious cycle, if that's what you're basing your sense of happiness on, is to continuously buy things to give you that false sense of happiness. So
Yeah.
that's where I think, a lot of people go wrong. And for me, one way that I try to recommend to tell people to gain control of your money is for 1 month, walk around with a piece of paper and a pencil and write down everything you buy. And then at the end of the month, you are able to analyze your own personal spending habits. I could give general tips, the latte factor, don't buy Starbucks out, eating lunch out, going to the movies, whatever, but that doesn't relate to everyone. But when you personalize it and you write down everything you buy at the end of the month, you can analyze it. It's your handwriting. The numbers aren't lying. And then you can see if there are areas in your life that you can cut out. And then, and then you'll have more money in your pocket.
All right. Well, that definitely sounds like important wisdom. Although I do note, I know that it's very difficult for people to do that. My day job is that I'm a financial advisor. I deal more on the investment side. In fact, when I have people who have budgeting problems, I refer them out to budgeting counselors because I think that's a whole specialty in and of itself. But I do certainly feel the dynamic and the difficulty, especially when I work with couples where maybe one of the spouses is kind of a free spirit and the other one is a little more of a number cruncher. And that can not only create a money problem, but it creates a marital problem as well.
Definitely. And it's interesting. I think though sometimes because we are attracted to somewhat opposites sometimes. And usually in a relationship, you do have one that is more of the spender and one that is more of the saver. And in my relationship, my wife Tracy, she was more of the spender and I was more of the saver. But over time, it's kind of interesting that it's shifted a little bit. And I've kind of seen her side of it's okay to spend money sometimes and have fun. And if you save up and you pay for it in cash, it's good. But at the same token, for her, she's starting to want to save a little bit more because she really enjoyed being a stay-at-home mom. So she's kind of saw the value in saving. So I think even if you go into a relationship and you are on different ends, I think if you can find that common ground, it just makes your marriage grow and your relationship grow, and you become that much stronger as a couple. So I understand, a lot of divorces happen because of money problems, but that's when I think if you don't see eye to eye with your spouse and why you're working on these goals, then it can become a hindrance. But if you are on track and you're working towards a common goal together, there's nothing more powerful, I think, in a marriage than if you accomplish that together as a couple, because then your lives and you grow closer and not just in a monetary factor.
I think that sounds like very good wisdom. We're talking with Danny Kofke, who, based in Georgia, he's written a number of books about personal finance, specifically about budgeting. And, well, Danny, one of the things you talk about is really how to teach children about money. How old do you think a child has to be until you go on? At what point would you say you should start teaching a child about money?
We started with our daughters when they were both 3. And you do basic things at that point. It's not, I mean, you're not going to teach them compound interest and those types of things at that young of an age. But what we did was we started off with basic chores. And I'm going to say right now, I'm not a big fan of paying people for things they should be doing. But we made an exception when they were 3, and we did basic chores like cleaning your room, picking up after yourself, brushing your teeth, because I wanted the underlying goal was to teach money management. And what we did then at the end of the week, and we had a chore checklist, checked them off, they would get paid, and they could earn up to $1 a week, and they would get paid in change. And what we would do is 10% or 10 cents would go in a giveaway jar, 25% or a quarter would go in the savings jar, and the rest would go in the spending jar. So when they're like 3 and 4, we just kind of want to instill that mindset that we give away first, then we save, then we spend. And when you are able to just start small and do that, it makes the problems that arise in the future that much easier to handle. And as they've gotten older, when they get to be 6, 7, that's when they see more things that they want. And we don't really have arguments in the store, because if we're at a store and they see something they really want and it wasn't on our list to buy them, say, well, you can have it if you have enough money in your savings or spending jars. If you don't, then you're going to have to continue to work to earn more money. So it's just a good, easy way to teach kids basic financial principles at that young of an age. And if you just going forward, as simple as that, give away 10%, save 25%, spend the rest. If we did that as adults, then there would not be the big economic problem that many countries are facing right now. That's simple.
Yeah, you bet. Well, I guess one of the jars you need to add at some point when they get older is a big jar for taxes, because that's where a
Yeah,
heck of a lot of the money is going to go. So, okay, that's a good technique. What other technique do you use to teach kids about money?
I think, and this is where parents go wrong a lot of times, is money is such a taboo topic for many families. We'll talk about the birds and the bees. We'll talk about many other things, but money, it still remains an embarrassing issue, unfortunately, for a lot of families. And I think as mom and dads, if you've messed up handling money, point that out to your kids. Say, gosh, when I a few years ago or whatever, I blew a bunch of money by doing this, because kids love it when their parents mess up. Shows that you're human. But then you say the important thing is I learned from that mistake. And in life, not just in money issues, but plenty of other issues as kids, you're going to go through and make mistakes. We all make mistakes. The important thing is we learn from those mistakes and we become better because of them. And I think that's where parents sometimes we go wrong, because we want to shield our kids from them. And I will tell you, as a school teacher, we are doing a lousy job as schools of teaching children financial literacy. So if you're a parent out there, it is up to you to instill those values in your child or your children in order to make them, ensure them to give them the right tools so they don't make the same mistakes that so many of us have made.
So, what about kids who come from families where their parents are absolute financial mess ups, right? Which is, by the way, lots and lots of families, because there's today $1 trillion in credit card debt, and the average American has something like less than $2,000 or $3,000 in savings. So it's not
Right.
like the kids have great examples, and you're saying they're not going to learn it from the schools. Maybe I should ask the question a little differently. Danny, can you give me a little hope for the next generation that maybe they'll be okay?
Yes, I think so. There are plenty of resources out there that they can look at, they can read. And actually, I have a book coming out in September, A Bright Financial Future, teaching kids about money pre-K through college for lifelong success. And what I do in that book is it's for parents, because I realize that when you just gave some of those statistics, a lot of parents don't get it. So it's very hard to pass on those values if you don't have them. But what I've done is just divide it into different age groups, ages 3 to 5, specific money lessons you can teach your child. Ages 6 through 8, 9 through 11, 12 through 15. And I go on until young adulthood. And in each chapter, there's just specific things you can do as a parent. Even if you are not good at handling money yourself, some easy to use techniques that you can use to teach your child about handling money. And if you're a parent out there that doesn't know how to handle money properly, well, I mean, there are a lot of ways and areas that you can improve on that, and plenty resources for you to find to learn some financial knowledge. And we're not talking you have to learn all about stocks and different types of insurance and things like that, but just the basics of money management. It's so important.
It certainly is, and certainly we'll go back to the very first thing which you said is you should spend less than you earn. We've been talking with Danny Kofke, who is an expert in not only for himself, he set the example, but he's taught many, many other people about how to handle the day-to-day money questions that come up. Danny, we're just about out of time, but tell me in the last few seconds, how can people follow you and your work?
Probably the easiest way, if you just do a basic Google search, so Danny Kofke, Danny Kof as in Frank, Ke. And usually the first thing that pops up is my blog page, dannykofke.blogspot.com. And on there, links to order my books, email me, see some of my media appearances, and much more.
All right, we will put a link to that at the show notes at goldsteinongelt.com. Danny Kofke, thanks so much for your time.
Hey, thank you so much for having me on, Doug. I enjoyed it.
You've been listening to the Goldstein on Gelt Show with money maven Doug Goldstein. Doug's weekly radio show is heard around the world, but if you miss it, you can download the podcast at www.goldsteinongelt.com. The Goldstein on Gelt Show gives you up-to-date financial ideas so you can get on the path to financial freedom. If you'd like your questions answered on the air or off, send Doug an email to doug@profile-financial.com. It's your money for your future, so join Doug every week to build your wealth on the Goldstein on Gelt Show.